This is Transport BT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
If you think the labor market is tough, how about this for a job description? Men wanted for dangerous expedition, low wages for long hours of arduous labor under brutal conditions, months of continual darkness and extreme cold, great risk to loss of life and limb from disease, accidents, and other hazards. Small chance of fame in case of success. Sounds like my job. That's a recruitment advertisement from Ernest Shackleton, one of the famous polar explorers of the late 19th and early 20th century. Now on Transport BT, we cover stuff that flies, crawls, sails, and even orbits in space, but this is the first time we're talking about skiing. So our guest today is former Dyson CEO Roland Krueger, someone who's had an interesting and varied career, not just in the tech and automotive sector, but also he's a pioneering explorer. He skied solo to the South Pole and just last year found a new route through the mountains in Antarctica. Now we'll get insights on exploration and a different kind of polarity, the future of cars and personal devices. And also stay tuned to find out why half a liter of ice cream topped with mayonnaise is involved in the process. Well, not here in the studio, of course. Welcome to the show, Roland.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So please tell our listeners about your personal and professional experience.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. I'm a senior advisor sitting on the board of several companies, but I spent the majority of my professional life in the car industry, in the automotive industry. And actually, I started as a designer and designed the interior of the first smart car, and had the privilege to have some very good experience during that shaped my idea of what it takes to take big decisions and move things forward. And then I rose through the ranks to become an executive in 2 car companies and also with Dyson.
Why did you choose Singapore?
Well, it was always work-related, but even without work-related, I was been in Singapore a lot. So in addition to my professional life, in my what I could call private career, I have developed a skill to do polar expeditions over the last 2 decades. And it has formed also my idea about leadership, how to lead yourself and how to lead others, because I'm of the opinion if you are able to lead yourself, you are also better equipped to lead others.
I read about the explorations and what you did, and it sounds borderline painful. And it's no small task, but so why would you want to do it, actually? Where does the passion come from?
The true story, and it's very simple, it's actually started as a childhood dream, influenced by books that you read or things that you saw. And for me, it was about exploration. The heroic years, as it was called, of polar exploration really fascinated me as a kid, and I read the books. Obviously, there's Roald Amundsen, the first person that was able to ski to the South Pole, to the geographic South Pole in 1911. And it always was in the back of my mind that these are people who stepped out of the comfort zone, did something that went beyond, and were able to discover the different corners of this planet. And that's fascinating. And that kind of stayed with me. They pushed the boundaries. And so by coincidence, in 1998, I met the first person who skied solo alone to the South Pole. His name is Erling Kagge, a Norwegian explorer. And it was a very inspirational lecture that he held. So I said to myself, you can actually do this. Kind of these memories came back. So I started to prepare. I started to read books. I started to meet people who've done it before. I skied through Greenland in 2002, kind of like a training exercise. A lot of things went wrong there. So I learned a lot about clothing, about protecting yourself, deal with the cold. And then it went from there. Ultimately, I went to the South Pole solo, so I became the first German to do so, and one of very few people who did it twice, once in a team and once solo.
For your explorations, you've been to the South Pole twice, and last year you did a new route to Queen Mount Mountains in East Antarctica. What is important about this?
Well, Antarctica is a huge continent, and it's very remote, and not much of Antarctica is actually explored even today with all the modern science and ability to explore. So Queen Maud Land is an area which is rather less explored. We decided to ski through a mountain range from Queen Maud Land, which is in East Antarctica. And this route was never done before. That's why we also chose it. So it's not a full-length trip to the geographical South Pole. It actually goes from east to west through these mountains. Some of these mountains have been climbed, Singularity, but the whole trip was not done this way before. Prepared ourselves and then went for it. And the reason is that this area is so fascinating and not much is known about it. You step foot on ice and snow that nobody else was there, and you see things that were never seen before. We took a lot of pictures and films, and that is very rewarding.
And would you say from before you started your polar exploration career to now, has it given you a very different perspective on the world, on everything?
Well, it shapes your belief of how you can achieve something seemingly unattainable. Because if you go for a task like this, you have to prepare yourself, you have to train, you absorb, you grow, and that's very important. So I always say, always be better prepared than everyone else. And that builds the foundation that you need to then take a bold decision and do something that's beyond what was done before or beyond the comfort zone and push the boundaries. And that also then reinforces the ability to start something which was not done before and achieve something that was not done before.
That sounds very useful in business, actually. What's one thing that you learned doing these expeditions?
Well, the preparation is key because you put yourself into a position where you are fully accountable for yourself. On an expedition, every participant will have to be accountable for their survival. And that's something that hones you for understanding what it takes to achieve something. To be accountable is one of the key issues to drive business. You have to be accountable for what you're doing, and you have to hold people accountable for what they're doing, because ultimately you're doing the business not only for yourself, but for customers, for the owners of a company, for the shareholders, and you have to hold yourself accountable, and you need to be a role model to do so. And you learn that best when you undertake an expedition, from my viewpoint.
And I read the book that you wrote about that experience. And one of the things that stood out to me was you got a tear in your tent one time. And you described that situation as life-threatening because if you didn't repair the tent properly, you would have frozen to death out in the snow, right?
You don't have any protection. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So that's what you mean by accountability, right? You had to fix the tent there and then
Yes.
and do it right.
So I sewed up the tent again. Yes.
So you're pretty good at sewing by now.
I do also prepare all my equipment and all my clothing, and I sew up my clothing myself because then I am sure it works for the conditions that you are in.
And I asked you about lessons you learned from expeditions, but is there anything the other way around that you learned as a leader or a CEO, but you would not have learned out in the wilderness?
Of course, if you don't learn daily, I think that's a problem, if I may say. You have to sit down and see what you've learned every single day, that you can improve yourself every single day from what you've encountered. Every problem that you face in business will not be singular. It will always be a multi-layered and multi-level problem that you encounter every single day. One of the jobs is in business to solve those problems and to push the business forward. So what you learn is that with these multifaceted problems, you also need to have a very, very strong team that is committed. And that is very similar to an expedition. Even if you do a solo expedition, you have a team that helped you prepare, and you will have multi-layer problems that you need to solve. And it's very, very similar. But the best is in a team or with a team, you learn how to place the team in the right position to motivate them, and then to do that together and achieve something together.
That's Roland Krueger. We're going for our break right now. And when we come back, we will eventually get to China's automakers and the mayonnaise as well.
Market Focus Weekly, now hosted by Howie Lim. A sharp weekly deep dive into what's moving markets in Singapore and across the region. With analysts and market insiders to break down the forces shaping the week ahead. New episodes every Friday, powered by the journalism of the Business Times. Find Market Focus Weekly wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, back to Transport BT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
We're back with Transport BT. We have Roland Krueger, longtime business leader in automotive and tech fields, and he's talking to us about the future of automotive and his expeditions as well. So Roland, your former employers, BMW, Nissan, the legacy automakers are all facing quite a lot of difficulties right now. If you were back in the helm of one of those companies, what would you do?
The entire car industry is really going through a pivotal change, and we see that every single day. But please understand that I will not be able to comment on any specific car maker. But what I can say is, when I was leading Infinity at that time, we brought a good team together, a great team very motivated. We had a very strong dealership organization, especially in the US, and that drove the business, and we were tremendously successful, and people were motivated by this. I believe that every company or every organization, to its core, has a specific strength. In a situation where the industry is going through changes or is challenged, what is key is to remember those strengths and build on them like the foundation. And then being bold enough to take decisions because you have the confidence because of your strengths that you have developed over time. So it could be different areas of strength. Maybe it's, very cost-effective production. Maybe it is very innovative technologies. If you concentrate on that to build your foundation or have your foundation, then it gives you the confidence to say, okay, we need to do something different given the changes in the industry. So those bold decisions will make a difference. And I believe that many of the companies are taking bold decisions at the moment or will do, but you need a good team that is motivated and they'll pull through.
Do you think it's really just about they have to do a certain number of EV models, or it's deeper than that?
I think it's deeper than that. There's a change in drivetrains. Is it EV only? Most probably not. There will be other drivetrains that are interesting. Hybrid is very interesting depending on which region you talk about. It also depends on the charging infrastructure, the ecosystem that you are operating in, that your customers use the car in. And there is a lot of innovation at the moment on hydrogen. So I believe there is an opportunity that it will be coming. It will take a little bit more time also because of the infrastructure for that. But I wouldn't underestimate the adaptability of the companies itself. And I think everybody is working on something. Everyone has their core strength and they should concentrate on it and then take a bold decision forward.
So legacy car makers, focus on your strengths and do what you know. On another trend, the cars and appliances, like smartphones, smart devices, they're increasingly becoming fused together. Dyson wanted to build a car, but stepped away from it. Can you tell us a bit about that or what went wrong for the company?
Yeah, these are two questions. The first question is naturally because in an environment where you have more EVs, these cars need to be connected because they need to be charged. They need to communicate with the charging. So you build up an ecosystem and naturally the car is becoming, I wouldn't call it a device, but a vehicle that is fully connected and has technologies in it that you might not need if you have a traditional combustion engine. And that has set off a lot of innovation and a lot of ideas what to put into a car, and also has changed the vehicle design, especially inside the interior design. So that innovation is interesting and it will continue. So you're right. It seems to be they're becoming a device. I would call it they become increasingly connected and are part of a total ecosystem, especially because of the EV, the battery electric vehicles. The second question you ask is, nothing went wrong, actually. We had a great car. And let me say this, James Dyson is an incredible engineer and an inspiring innovator to everyone. And it is an honor to work with him and having worked with him. The car that was designed and that we designed was outstanding. It would have been the first car with 1,000-kilometer range at that time. We had a running prototype, but we took a conscious decision. Car industry is very capital intensive. And we were at the point where we would have to press the button and go forward with a business case and invest in broader terms into production and also into the setup for sales and marketing. And we decided that we are going to go back and invest into the core business of Dyson, and that was very successful. It served us well. So nothing went wrong. The car was great. The engineering was great. James Dyson had incredible new ideas for this car, but we just took a conscious decision to say we take the investments and we put it back into the core business. Nobody could foresee that COVID was coming the year after. And we invested into the business. We pledged a certain level of investment that we fulfilled also into new products, into new product ranges. And that has served the company well. So it was a conscious decision. And in hindsight, it was the right decision.
That's from your own playbook, focus on your strengths, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now we see Chinese brands, especially Xiaomi and Huawei, they're coming out with cars, different degrees of success, yeah. But what do you think sets them apart? Like they seem to have done that transition to cars successfully, which is not easy, as you know.
Well, first of all, time will tell about the success because, like I said, it's a very capital-intensive industry. You have seen that in the industry that some of the companies have retracted a little bit from those developments. Some others go full in. So we will have to see. I think time will tell. It is interesting. It's an interesting development for a company that comes from a different industry, stepping into that vehicle industry. And they've definitely also pushed the boundaries a little bit. And it's an industry change. There's a challenge within the industry. We have to see how it goes.
And that's interesting. You said about whether or not their growth can be sustained, because everyone talks about China's speed and much faster product cycles, and they're really changing the game. But do you think that's sustainable on their end, or they're overreaching themselves and maybe we'll see a drawback?
I think it's very, very interesting, and every competition should be motivation to become better if you see that there's strong competition. So I wouldn't underestimate the adaptability of the car industry. Those are big companies, but they can adapt, and I'm sure there is a lot of things going on within the companies that we don't know about or that are not communicated. And we will see some more innovation and we will see some more developments coming soon. But you're right, the speed of innovation and the speed of introduction of new cars is very high at this point in time.
Because there are drawbacks, right? Like if you're, as a customer, you buy a car and not even a year later, there's a new model that's cheaper, you feel cheated. Your brand loyalty may not be as strong.
It really depends on if the level of innovation is increased or not. I think if you put a new product into the market, you also have to show something new, and you have to put a level of innovation into it that makes it interesting to buy the new car. If it's the same car with just a small little change, what you say most probably holds true. But at the moment, the innovation cycle is much, much faster.
And, for you started out as a car designer at Mitsubishi very long ago. And you're one of the rare designers who've actually gone from design to management and leadership. But I'd like to ask you about car design now. What do you think of it? Do you think it looks strange, the EV trends and all that?
Well, EVs have different proportions because of the battery. Therefore, some of these cars give a different look. What I really like is when companies do something bold and different and try something. I personally think we don't see that enough. Yes, of course, there's a financial risk and there's a business risk with it, but you got to push the boundaries. And this is an opportunity to do so. And there are many examples in the car industry where this has happened. Change the image or push the image forward. And I think that's important.
Do any designs currently stand out to you that you like? Or?
Yeah, I don't want to be a judge of my fellow designers that are in the business, but I think if you try something new and it really comes across and you can see it in the design, that is something that should be supported. And I always look at those cars from that angle.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, they need more different envelope pushing designs. I don't want every EV to look the same. Now, even Ferrari's in the EV game. We had Dyson, we had Sony, we had Huawei. Such a big change in the car industry over the last few years, but there's more to come. What do you think the future of the automotive industry looks like? Is it subscription-based stuff, autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, let's start with autonomous vehicles. That depends on the environment that you operate in, because the autonomous vehicles need to communicate with their area where they are operating. For example, like Singapore would be destined to see autonomous vehicles rather earlier than later because you have a well-managed traffic guiding system already, and that will help. To me, those systems and the development of those systems, which are definitely at the forefront of technology, give a huge improvement to the car that we're driving today, which is not necessarily autonomous, but it has a lot of helping hands, so to say, a lot of systems within the car.
Assistance features.
Assistance for lane change warnings, cameras, collision warnings, and so on. That makes driving safer. So the way I look at this is this development is great. It will not work in every area of autonomous vehicles, but there are areas such as Singapore or other urban areas where this will work and is already working. But in general, it will make cars safer and more drivable in very dense urban areas as well as also outside. And that is a huge improvement. Everyday improvement, everyday life improvement.
From safety as well.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Safety.
And what about other parts of it, like subscriptions for cars or?
Well, it's another form of renting and leasing. Again, it depends on the environment. You have an environment where it is more difficult to own a car. So therefore, you go for car sharing or subscription models. You have environments where, first of all, it is important that you have a car because you need it, and the environment is not there to have such a subscription model, or it doesn't lend itself, and that will go to other models. And that comes back also how I see the industry proliferating, focusing on areas where, for example, you don't have the charging environment, you would not have that many EVs, you would have hybrid cars. But in urban areas where the infrastructure and the ecosystem is there, you will be able to have full-blown EV infrastructure, and that helps. So what I see is that you will have to serve several sets of customers or several segments in several different areas of the world. And you can see that already, and that will continue to happen.
And all the big guys have to do that to be diversified powertrain.
You need to take a conscious decision where you want to be and which segment you want to be. And some people may say, well, we don't want to be in a certain segment. That's their conscious decision for the business. You still will have combustion engine to some extent, and that's a conscious decision of the business that you're in.
And now we get to the part where I think all listeners have been waiting for, and that's the half-liter pot of vanilla ice cream. So, I don't know, just really stood out to me in the book that you wrote about your trip to the South Pole. Could you explain what that means, really?
Yeah. So this refers to a passage in the book where I described that one of our team members on our first Antarctic expedition to go to the South Pole arrived in South America, and we realized he did not have built up enough body weight to
Why
sustain.
do you have to do that, actually?
To sustain not only the cold, but the fact that you cannot bring enough food for your daily calorie intake. So your calorie intake per day on an expedition like this is about anything upwards from 8,000 calories. In hard days, most probably more than 10,000 calories. You cannot bring that much food and actually eat that much food in one go. So you have to gain some weight and bring some buffer, so to say, carry on yourself. So this particular person, we realized hadn't done that enough. So we had 14 days in South America. We subscribed him to a diet. And the diet was 2 large pizzas at lunch and a lot of spaghetti in the evening, and half a liter of vanilla ice topped with a full tube of mayonnaise.
Did you ever try that yourself?
No. I tasted it. It tasted awful, honestly speaking. But he managed to gain a lot of weight in 14 days, I can tell you that. And he lost it again.
I mean, that's the funny side of the preparation, Besides you drag tires through, for example, the countryside of Bavaria for many hundreds of kilometers to train, right? And
yes.
There's so much training involved in preparation.
Yeah, and at the same time, you need to gain weight. You have to make sure your body is really fit for this. So you start eating much, much more than you usually eat. And that also trains your whole system to cope with what you're about to do. But this was a very particular story, and we still laugh about it. So.
It is funny, I give you that. Roland Krueger, polar explorer and business leader with us, talking about the future of cars and polar exploration as well. And you're actually gonna release a video about your last expedition soon.
Yeah, we produced a small film. It's a documentary, but it's not only about the expedition, but it's also about how we trained, how we prepared ourselves, to bring across a little bit the philosophy. If you fail to prepare, you prepare yourself for failure. In this environment, if you have a problem, it might be a real serious problem if you haven't built your foundation. And that's the underlying theme of everything.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you for being on Transport BT.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Now stay tuned next week as we have an episode on the public housing market. This episode of Transport BT was produced by Howie Lim and Chieh together with our editor, Claressa Monteiro. It was written and presented by me, Derryn Wong. Thank you for listening.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts. Or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.